Today is a monumental day in the life of North Carolina Central University. I am elated that you all have joined us for the official groundbreaking on 2 new residence halls and the news of a third yet to come. These modern facilities will provide our students with innovative living and learning environments that are on par with the excellent classroom education that they already receive.
This is the largest contract that has ever been awarded to an ethnic minority-owned construction firm in the state of North Carolina. Also, you'll make history a second time that it's also the largest contract in North Carolina that has been designed and built by minority contractors as well as designers. So you guys are blazing the trail for others to follow in years to come.
NCCU graduates have always been in the forefront of societal discourse in both North Carolina and the United States, and they remain there today. It is only right that the university provide a special student center for these young eagles.
Each of these residence halls will have their own unique DNA. Design excellence does matter to us, and it matters for NCCU, and they become the ambassador for excellence on this campus. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and we get most excited about groundbreakings because we get to see constructed and built. We spent so much time envisioning and drawing. So thank you again. It's a fantastic opportunity, fantastic day for you all. God has given us a beautiful day to enjoy. So thank you.
I'm Marquis Short, and today we will be presenting our topic, which is the impact assessment of facilities management. As you can see, most of our data and analysis will come from the current renovations and projects that are happening on the campus of North Carolina Central University, which is a public-private partnership, better known as P3. So for you guys that don't know, it is a contract between the public sector entity and the private sector entity that outlines the provisions of assets and delivery of the services. We're going to jump right into what we have for you guys today. We're going to start it off with Ms. McCoy. Ms. McCoy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so facilities management actually goes back to the 70s, and it started as just the janitorial services and the cleaning, like the maintenance and the cleaning of buildings. And in the 80s, that's when it became formally recognized as a functional area, and the International Facilities Management Association was formed. So then, like over time, as the functional area continued to grow, institutes of higher education began to adopt it, and they put emphasis on the use of space, environmental control, health and safety, construction, and things related to the management of the facilities of the institution. So basically, like when a student visits an institution, the shape of the facilities and the environment are basically their first impression. And so like I know for me, when I first visited colleges, I don't like construction, so that's a turnoff for me. But when speaking to other people, some people like construction. They see it as, okay, so the school cares enough about their buildings to improve them, and they also can afford to keep up their buildings. So facilities management, they outline all of their plans and everything they're handling in their master and strategic plans. And we can go into detail a little later in the presentation about what those processes look like.
Thank you so much. We're going to keep right on flowing. We feel like there are some very important terms that you guys need to know to better understand facilities management and how they operate. So Ms. Rosberg, can you please explain to the class what those terms are?
Operations is one of those terms. Operations on a college campus is the basic functionality of the university. It includes all services that involve the student body as well as faculty and staff. Some examples of that would be student life, veteran centers that may be available on different college campuses, as well as childcare services and cafeteria services. Capital projects is another that can range from multiple levels of conception, which can be more direct to complex scopes of work, which impact the campus and the campus community. Some things include different renovations that involve the spaces on the campus, restrooms, kitchen areas, and hallways. Another term is master planning. Master planning is a campus plan that is a physical manifestation of a university's strategic plan. It's basically the roadmap for the future of a campus. Property acquisition and disposition. The purpose of that is to manage and dispose of college-owned properties such as old furniture, materials, and equipment. Engineering design is the process of several steps that engineers follow by to come up with a solution to a problem at hand. Contract development is an exchange of agreements that the law will enforce. That has a lot to do with what we'll talk about later in regards to the P3. Project construction also has to do with the P3. It's a series of related tasks, which when they are carried out in the correct order will lead to the completion of a project. Renovation planning is a simple process of improving broken, damaged, or outdated structures. Energy conservation planning is the effort made to reduce consumption of energy by using less of an energy service, such as like going green on campus. Sustainability, it was defined in 1983 by the Brundtland Commission. And the HUB program, which is something that involves a lot of things that goes on campus as well as construction, basically is a disadvantage of business enterprise, which has been certified and is currently participating in the statewide uniform certification program. And last but not least is facilities maintenance and operation. It's a broad spectrum of services encompassed by competencies, processes, and tools required to assure the built environment will perform the functions for which a facility was designed and constructed.
Thank you for that information. Just to go back for a second, Ms. McCoy, you stated when you come to a college campus, you don't like construction. Can you give us like a little bit more on why is that for you, or why don't you look forward to seeing construction when you come to a college campus?
So for me, it's like, because most of the time it's, blocking parking spaces or taking up parking spaces, and it's parking is already limited on a college campus. So the construction is, taken away from that. So it's even less parking, and it's frustrating to have to park somewhere far and then walk. I know in college you have to walk to class, but it's just frustrating for me.
Yeah. And from a campus impact standpoint, and as far as your students, your residential, your commuter students, more so for your residential students, I think when we see construction, we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about where this place will be in the next, 5 to 10 years. When you come to school, like you said, you want to see updated dorm rooms. You want to make sure your classroom and the desks and stuff are not like run down and broken. You want a pretty like work-friendly environment, a place where you go into, it looks nice, and you also can get your job done as well. Like no one wants to live in a ran down space, or walk around the campus where everything is broke down and everything is dirty.
Right.
One thing students cater towards a lot, and it's like your first impression is like your campus tour. So whenever you come to that campus, you want to make sure that you're asking those questions. If you see construction, like what is this? What is going on? What is this going to be? Or how do your classrooms look? How do the dorm rooms look? These are frequently asked questions that students ask residential students, and they're very important. It's very important to your 4 years, or ever many years you have it at university. It's very important to your success and your progress there as well. Residential students, the construction does hurt them, like you said, because when you come, commuter students, when you don't live on campus, you have to come, find a parking space, attend class. You have to think about all this stuff when you wake up in the morning. Sometimes, when I was a commuter for a while, and I have to come to school, my class don't start till 11 or 12, but just to ensure that I had a parking space, I had to be there by 8 or 9. So things like that are also important to think about as far as construction on the college campus. But one thing I can say, I think NCCU has done a great job at making sure their plan, for every question you have, they have something in their plan to answer your question. So like with the like you said with the parking questions, they have a whole master plan for what the parking looks like. If we don't offer it on campus, here are the places you can go and get shuttled here from here to there. So
Right.
students have that information as well as faculty and staff, which we're going to get into. Um, I think they bite the bullet the most because when it comes to parking, I'm not mistaken, they pay more, um, and it's like I said, it's harder for them to come to get those spaces to where they need to park, and a lot of people want to be near their building. You don't want to park too far away from your building, things like that. Also, making sure that their workplaces are up to date, up to par, updated systems, technology, everything you need to garner success for your students. Faculty and staff need that, and it's like there's something particular about a creative like territory that assists with getting your thoughts and everything just flowing. Like when you're in like a place where, okay, like I said earlier, this is nice, or this is that, this is the third. You're thinking about that and you're not thinking about the negative things. When you go into a rundown building, you're worried about everything else except for what you're supposed to be doing in that
Mm-hmm.
space. So
Yeah.
like you're just going there and you're like, well, why does this look like this? Well, you're in here to learn, so that's not one of the things that you really should be worried about. But it kind of goes hand in hand into making sure your campus is up to par and just making sure that you're always striving for the future. Making sure that everything is updated when you can. It's a lot of money, like we talked about with the P3 situation, which we'll definitely break that down more. But it's a lot that definitely goes into it. Community, they take a major hit as well. So I don't know if you guys know, but with the NCCU situation, they had to buy out houses, certain areas. People were real adamant about not giving up their houses. I've been here 30 years, blah, blah, blah. And it sucks. It definitely sucks because you never want someone to lose a place they've lived for a long time. But when you think about it from a university standpoint, it's always, what can we do to be better? Um, as far as for the student union, this is more so the student union side. We had to take those houses, and it was a few people that weren't really happy about the situation. And if I was in that situation, I probably would feel the same way they feel if I had a house there. I did all these renovations for them to just tell me like, yeah, we're gonna tear your house down and you're gonna have to move. Mr. Garrett, will you take the floor for us, please?
Yeah. Um, so here's where we kind of dig into what it is that we're assessing from the standpoint of facilities management and all of the entities that it comprises. Um, so we decided to look at the P3 projects and the new student center projects, the four current projects that NCC construction projects that NCCU has. Um, of the four, three are residence halls, and they are P3 projects. Um, P3 is simply public-private partnerships. And what that means is when a government agency takes on a private partner in order to save money. So in our instance, or in our case, we have private investors and we are entering into a long-term agreement that allows for us to not have to pay the money to build these facilities. However, that sort of takes away some of our control over the facilities. So there's good and bad. It's not a solve. It's not a completely solve all situation. Um, there are examples of public-private partnerships at other institutions that have gone well. No problems. All parties were considered. Everything went well for everyone concerned. The benefits were positive for both sides. Um, the problem comes in when something goes wrong. So um, for us, the as Mariana said earlier, we know that the behavior of students is impacted by their physical environment. I mean, that's without question. We know that, just like she said, when she comes to campus and she can't find a parking space, that's a problem. But if you come to campus and you live on campus and you don't have a car and your room is great and the buildings you go to have your co-curricular activities is great, your learning environments are great, then you're going to have a good experience at the university. Most of the decisions that are driven on this campus are driven by the strategic plan and the master plan. The master plan is, the strategic plan is sort of a blueprint for the goals and objectives that we use as a university to influence the holistic development of students in their curricular and co-curricular activities. The master plan is the physical environment. Those are the things that we're talking about now, which are the new construction projects or renovations that may take place, or the landscape. All of those things are sort of included in the master plan. What we decided to do was look at the effectiveness of the facilities management department. It was much more difficult to quantify or qualify their effectiveness to individual students or to individual departments, but on a campus as a whole, what kind of job are they doing of supporting the initiatives of the university and supporting the students? So if you look at the ways that P3s benefit a university, they help with the infrastructure. They make sure that both parties are at least considered when they're making all the decision, and faster project completion times. Some of the things that can happen when they don't work well, at Oklahoma University, there's a current lawsuit for $250 million against the school for not satisfying their portion of the agreement. Now, the school won't be on the hook for that because technically they're not responsible. There are other holding entities that will end up being responsible for that money, but the lawsuit is filed nonetheless, because what happened was the institution said, please build this facility, this dormitory, and we'll fill it out. We'll get the students in, they'll live there, we'll all make money. But it didn't happen. The students didn't come, they didn't stay, so it didn't work out well. So the three projects that we have right now are the Chidley South Residential Hall, the George Street Residential Hall, and the Lawson Street Residential Hall. Those are the P3 projects. The fourth project is the new Student Center, which was a labor of love that was taken on by students a couple of years ago. The students said, hey, we know that it's important for us to pay it forward. So we're going to vote as a student body to increase our tuition to make the money that will pay for the student center. So that money, it's a bond referendum. And that money, along with money from the state, pays for the student center. In contrast to the P3, we own the building. We have the say-so in what happens with the building. We have a say-so in how the building is constructed. They have to listen to us as the end user as to what we need from the facility. Here's where facilities management comes into play. On the P3 side, facilities management is more of an advisor. They have a role and they're a liaison between the university's interests and the partner, the private partner. Now, the private partner makes the decision on how the building looks, how the building is built, what contractors they use. Ms. Roberson talked about HUD. Now, that is something that we can't determine HUD. That's state, that's law. They have to be given a right or an opportunity to put their name in the hat when it comes time for requests for proposals or requests for bids. So that's nothing we can control, but we have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure those things are happening. That's where facilities management comes in. They have to say, hey, are you making sure that those underserved businesses are being used? So for facilities management, their role in the P3 is much less than it is in, say, for the new student center, because they don't really make the decisions, but there still has to be an open line of communication because they're still responsible for making sure that the campus is safe and that we're doing the right things. For instance, if a street needs to be closed because they're bringing in equipment, then one of the facilities management personnel will have to communicate to the university police and all of the other stakeholders that would be impacted by that activity. Now, if the partner hasn't communicated that, then of course the project manager can't do his job. In addition, there are situations where the facilities management personnel will have to communicate with the campus community because maybe a water main has been hit and that's going to affect 5 buildings, or they're going to need to put in a new power supply, and that's going to affect 3 buildings on this side of campus. Those kind of things happen on both sides. So the real difference between what happens with the P3 and what happens with the new student center is, in a project like the new student center, our facilities management on campus is responsible for the total working of the project. That's from the time from time of conception to time of completion. They are involved. They are the reporting source for the chancellor. They're the reporting source for the board of trustees and all other campus constituents and stakeholders. That is the main difference between P3 and the bond project. So in terms of how we assessed how well they were doing, we used interviews with current employees and students. We used local and national data, and we used a formula, B equals F P times E, which is something that we picked up in this class. Behavior is a function of interaction between a person and the environment. B is the behavior, F is the function, P is the person, and E is the environment. In the end, we decided to focus solely on their effectiveness at doing the things that support the university and its mission. To that end, we were able to use sort of some criteria that prove project managers are effective. And we made a Likert scale on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the low end, 5 being the high end of how effective they are at doing those things. So one of the things that good project management does is the scope of work. We gave them a 5. There are countless hours invested in creating the scope of work needed to finish for the finished product. Resource allocation. They follow all state mandate guidelines in securing goods and services. Communication. Lines of communication are well established. Stakeholder management. Transparency with the chancellor, board of trustees, faculty, staff, students, and the community. The estimates. That kind of goes back to the scope of work. If you do the work for the scope of work, then your estimates will be, the margin of error on your estimates will be low. Gave them a 5. Risk management, constant measures to qualify and quantify the possible risk factors. Kind of forecasting the things that possibly can go wrong and putting measures in place to make sure that they don't. The project culture. That's very important. For the Student Center project, the project managers on campus worked with the design and the architect firms to assess the culture and climate of our campus. Over the course of a year, they met with the students, they met with the staff, they did surveys, they did campus visits, they benchmarked us against other campuses, all in an effort to make sure that whatever the finished product they came up with was something that we needed at North Carolina Central based on the students and the climate and the culture here. The competencies, they continuously seek out best practices and professional development. Planning sessions, they have weekly staff meetings, site visits, and debriefings, and monitoring and control. So for the P3 projects, monitoring and control just means that they're present, they're available whenever the P3 is giving a report, and they give their input if they think that something is not in the best interest of the university. But at the end of the day, most of the decisions are made by the P3. We don't have a lot of power and control in what they're doing. Well, facilities management doesn't have a lot of power and control in that. But they do weekly review and revision of timelines, goals, and productivity. So we were able to use those criteria and give them a favorable rating. We felt like they are doing the things that are necessary to be an effective department on this campus. They are concerned with the students and they are concerned with the stakeholders. There will be issues in any construction effort. However, the facilities management department is dedicated to the overall success of NCCU and its students.
All right, thank you so much, man. Now we're going to get into our question and answer portion. So we have 10 causes of project failure, which were flipped into questions that we're going to, that I'm going to ask and that we're going to answer to our knowledge of how we feel, how important these things are to project management and that situation. So for the first question, do you feel as though poor preparation is a major cause of project failure?
Definitely. I mean, if you don't take the time to do the work on the front end, it's going to definitely show during production. the finished product probably will suffer.
Yes, definitely. I I agree with Derek. The finished product will suffer if you even make it to the finished product because
Mm.
Right.
if you like say all the stakeholders involved need to prepare together because say you all have different visions of what you want the finished product to look like. Everybody's not on the same page. Your project's gonna crash.
Yeah, it is.
So
Right.
might not even make it.
Right. And for me, I kind of refer it back to school and taking a test. Like if you don't study for that test, you can't go in expecting to get an A. So you have to prepare for the task at hand. And this is definitely a great task that where one small issue can mess up your whole project.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's very important to make sure that in your preparation that everything is tick for tack how it needs to be, and you follow those guidelines to get to what your ultimate goal is. We can move along to question number two. So what is your view on inadequate documentation and tracking?
I'll speak on that one. Only from personal experience because I work in the medical field. I do a lot of documenting and charts. And I feel like if there's inadequate documentation or a way to, track the actual documentation itself, then you off track. No one has a roadmap to follow by, so to speak, and it can cause a lot of confusion.
Right.
I think also documentation as far as progress that's being made. So like
Right. Yeah.
an
Yeah.
example,
Absolutely.
I think of like working out. So you have a goal. When you work out, you have a goal. But if you don't see the progress, you're gonna want to give up. You're like, you know what, it's not working, so I'm just gonna stop. I'm not gonna finish what I started.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have documentation and tracking. Um, it's for accountability because if you were supposed to pick up a box of nails and now we're at the construction site and we can't put the wall up,
Because we don't
how do
have
you
the
know who was to pick up was supposed to pick up the box of nails? So it's accountability.
I agree with all you guys. And I think that's more so responsibility of the project manager in this aspect as well, because you need to know that you're going to complete your project on time. So having that documentation and that tracking is very important to getting the job done. So question three: does bad leadership lead to dysfunction within the workplace? I think we're all gonna. I'm gonna start with this one. Yes, it does. If your leader doesn't lead correctly, it's going to be hard for those under you to follow it. If you have bad leadership styles, leadership traits, um, people aren't going to want to get behind that, which is going to make okay, we're on this side, so we don't like our project manager or these guys on this side because of the way they lead, and now you're divided, and you can't get nothing done when you have a split down the middle. So
I just want to add, we have a motto at work because I work with a lot of mean and ugly doctors at times.
okay,
So it's lead by example or we will not follow, and we go
yeah, I
by
heard
day
that.
by day. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what I would say in regards to, bad leadership and having dysfunction, whether it's on a construction site, a college campus, or at home for that matter. I mean,
right.
being a leader, in your home is also important. So that's what I would say to that.
Um, in terms of a work site, bad leadership can lead to accidents.
Yeah,
Um, when you're thinking about construction and you're thinking about those people being feet up in the air, and their whole thought process is the fact that their boss didn't take care of business at the beginning of the day, then it makes them less focused on the job that they're doing. So, yeah,
right.
definitely.
All the answers. Next question: why do you think it's important to define parameters and enforce them?
I think again here accountability. You need to know who. Everybody needs to know who's doing what. So if it doesn't get done, you know who to hold accountable for that. So
Sounds good. I like it. I think you kind of covered it. We can jump to the next question. Do you think it is wise to have inexperienced project managers?
So this one, when I was thinking about this one, it's like, um, do you not give it to the inexperienced one just because they don't have experience? Like just because you don't have experience doesn't mean you're not capable of getting the job done. So at what point do you say, okay, even though they're inexperienced, I'm gonna let them do the job anyways?
Correct.
I,
I think I don't think it's wise, but you also have to start somewhere. So maybe that's with a
Right.
smaller project. I think it depends on the size of your project.
Hmm.
Where you allow an inexperienced project manager to
mm,
take place. Like this is a big project. You need someone that's been there, been through the fire, the good and the bad, so they know how to handle both situations. So I think for me, I would rather have someone that's experienced for this type of uh, this type of
These type of,
construction
hmm,
and
yeah,
renovation and thing that's going on there on NCCU's campus. Yes.
yeah,
it makes sense.
that goes back to that the marks that we gave facilities management in their competencies. They continuously seek out best practices and they continuously seek out opportunities for professional development. When I think in terms of uh, inexperienced, I think of competencies. Like I think they're trying to be polite and not say competent, but
Right.
there are times when people are not competent to do the job because they don't have the competencies. They do not have the skill set to do the job. And in project management, if that is not part of your skill set or your competency level, then you're not going to be successful. And then the project is going to fail. Like the impact, like you said, Marcus, I need somebody who knows what they're going to do. A lot of times in situations where project managers are in meetings and they're advocating for students or they're advocating for the stakeholders, they got to put their foot on the table and say, no, this is
Yeah.
what it's going to be based on this. So if you don't have those competencies or those skill sets, then yeah, like that's a problem.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
I definitely agree. Um, how important is it to have accurate cost estimations?
Hmm.
Very important.
Can you
Right.
in your household, if you have a budget
Uh-huh.
and the groceries are part of the budget, and you decide to go out and spend the grocery money, you don't eat the
And
rest
you
of the
don't
month.
eat.
You don't eat the rest. Right.
Right.
So I mean, it in situations like dealing with government money, if you don't forecast and say this is how much money we're going to need, it's not like you can just go back and say, hey, we need more money for these walls.
Right. And I think at that point, then it's if you can't get more money and you don't have any more money, you just wasted money because now
Hmm.
you can't finish the project.
Correct.
So
Which is
Or
this is the point I was.
that was wasting your money and that was wasting everybody's time.
or you
Yeah.
end up with a finished product that is like you'll get a finished product and it'll be a building and it'll serve the function, but it won't be what you need.
Right.
Correct. And that leads into the next question that we have, which is why is it a bad thing to have little communication at every level of management? I think as far as communication, it should be from top to bottom. Everyone should know what's going on. Um, so whether that's what I'm saying, the CEO of the building or the janitor, what I'm saying, you need to know what's going on, what's the day-to-day operations, what's next, what's this, that, and the third. So you don't ever want anyone at this site or at your job when you come to them and you're talking to them or you're asking them questions. I feel like that everyone should know, everyone should be on the same page. Um, that's how I look at it. That's the type of person, the type of leader that I aspire to be. I want to make sure that all my people are on the same page, so it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, let me go talk to my project manager. He can answer that question for you. So
Hmm. And that again, that goes back to the marks that we gave our facilities management department here. they have open lines of communication within the department
Mhm.
and between them and the private partner or the architecture firm, all of those.
Right.
They make sure that they are available to have the discussion if it's necessary. So communication is key. You have to have, I mean, I agree. The janitor needs to know that that so and so is going to happen in the building, just like the director of the building needs to know.
Right. Yeah. So, question 8: describe why the culture and ethical misalignment are pivotal to the overall success of the project.
I'm
I'll read
sorry.
that one again. It was kind of long. I'll read that one again. Describe why the culture and ethical misalignment are pivotal to the overall success of the project.
Oh,
I think you touched on this a little earlier when you talk
yeah.
about the culture. Right.
So um, if you are not conscious of the culture that you're providing something for, then you might give them something they don't want.
Right.
Um, what works for a PWI might not work for an HBCU. What works for a large HBCU might not work for a small HBCU. Private, public, it doesn't matter. If
Right.
you don't take the time to understand what your stakeholders want and what they need, then you are doing them a disservice.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think like I think that if your culture isn't right, then your team members won't be motivated to do what they need to do. You have to establish great culture and have people buy in to that culture as well. That's the key, buying in. If they're not buying in, then something needs to change. And you need to make updates and improvements to whatever your culture is to make sure those people buying in, to make sure they believe what you're actually selling at that point. Um, so how do we avoid competing priorities?
From department to department, or
So basically, when there are not enough resources, how do you avoid competing with other projects to get what you need when there's other construction going on? You know what I'm saying? That's doing the same thing. So it might be something going on. Like if something going on in Central right now, it might be something going on at Duke. How do you avoid competing for things at the same time? Like what do you do? Is that a different time frame or
um, I think communication is key if we're talking about on campus, but um, being aware of your surroundings also. You need to
Mhm.
know what other places are doing. You need to know what other construction is happening. You need to be current on the cost of steel.
Right,
Things like that that we wouldn't take, we wouldn't even think about. You need to you need to know that if you put a bush right here, it's going to stop somebody from walking across the street. I mean, I know that's an extreme example, but you need to know those things in order to make sure that whatever you're looking for, you know you can get it, and whatever you're going to do with it, you know it'll work.
yeah. And do we have any other comments on that question?
You nailed it. I agree.
Okay. Um, question 10. Um, is it okay to disregard project warning signs? I think we're all going to
No.
say no on this, but I
No.
still want I still want to hear your your opinion on why not, and see
Because
what we come up with.
you disregard the warning signs, and then in the end, when the project fails, it's like, well, the warning signs are there, but you ignore them. So now we're here when you could have
Yeah,
just paid attention to the warning signs and taken the steps to overcome them, and then get your project finished.
right. So one thing that I always say to myself is never ignore the warning signs. Not even in work, but in life. When you get a warning sign about something, never disregard it. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to think about it for a while and see which direction you want to take on it, but never disregard it. Never be like, okay, well, it's not that important. Um, cause that like when it at the end of the day it backfire. It backfire if it's a bad thing. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. So, you know, I think it's just important to be aware of everything that's going on around you.
Mhm.
So, all right. So if we have no more responses to that question, we would like to thank you guys for watching and listening to our presentation. We hope we have been as informative and engaging as possible, and we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you and have a great day.